So, Ricardo, thank you to be here.
Thank you for inviting me.
So we'll ask you a few questions as part of our expedition, Venatici. Can you present yourself succinctly?
Okay. My name is Ricardo Leto. I'm one of the inhabitants from the ecovillage. I live here now for about a year, so not super long. It feels like a lot has happened already. In my daily life, I work as an emergency physician, and I have a wife and 3 children. The third one being born here in the ecovillage. And yeah, I like many things: traveling, music, and doing interesting stuff. So that's why I came to the ecovillage.
Okay. So, when did the construction started, and when will it be finished?
The first I can answer. The second, I can't be precise. So don't say it's on camera. Now you have to. So the construction, it started last November or last October, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, about a year ago. A bit more than a year ago now. It started with laying the foundations. And then afterwards, it took a while before the first walls were coming up. So we plan on building the biggest construction are the 3 circles with each 12 houses. And the first circle is now roughly finished. We live there now, you know. The second circle, well, you worked a lot in it yourselves, so you know that the roof just is on, but you know also that a lot of work still needs to be done to make them livable. And the third one, you know, only the foundation is there. We hope that the third circle will be able to live in the third circle the end of May 2021.
Okay.
And then you have the 3 little buildings, the air where the artist in residence comes, and the 2 huts, the tree hut and the wijstwoning. I don't know how to translate that in English. And we're not sure when to finish them, as soon as we have time, but they have secondary priority. They're important. We want to finish them as soon as possible. And then you have the basalt acquis, but the timing is connected to the third circle because first the third circle need to be livable, because then the people from the temporary housing here can go in there, because the basalt battery will be built where the houses are now. So they have to first move. Houses need to be gone, and only then they can start the construction. And also the idea is to have within 4 years, we hope to have realized also a communal house here. So for internally communal house, but also as an information center to the neighborhood and to the region and Holland and Europe in general.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you are one of the coordinators of the construction site. And
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about your job?
Yeah. So our job is to function as a subcontractor. Everybody who works here is part of a. So in construction, you have a main contractor, but the main contractor, most of the times in big projects, they manage all the different parts, and we don't build everything ourselves. But the work that we as an eco-village do ourselves, for that work we function as a subcontractor. So we work in that way under the main contractor. So there are different functions, because in a way we're also the ones giving the assignment to the main contractor, but that's another level. So being the building coordinator and being in that circle that manages the work we have to do ourselves, it's the subcontractor function. And as a building coordinator, we function as the contact person between the eco-village as a subcontractor and the main contractor, and also the relationship with the other subcontractors, because we're dependent on it. We have to make sure that before we put the sheetrock, we have to make sure that the walls can be closed. So we need to know with the electrician that it's okay, with the plumber that it's okay, and everything like that. So and that's outward, and inward it means that we know what needs to be done. So we divide and plan the jobs that we need to do ourselves.
Okay.
Can you tell us about the different steps of this construction project?
Okay. You mean how the house is built up, or organizational wise, or practical how the house is built?
For example, first you organize the construction, then you buy all raw materials, then you construct.
Okay, I can tell you only part of it, I think, because
In general.
yeah. So first we bought the land. Then we already had a plan by an architect, so that was already there. And then we had to find a contractor who wanted to build it for us. Then we had to decide how exactly it would be built, and what part we would do ourselves and what part we wouldn't do ourselves. And that means also that then we had a budget, and with that we had to find a mortgage. So to find a bank who's willing to give us the money to build it, and then we have to repay the bank. Like when you buy one house, it's the same, but when you have this much, and you're not a multi-millionaire yourself, you also have to do that. So those were the first step in organizing. So that was a lot of work getting the money together for the land. They spent 7 or 8 years to find the money and to get the money to buy the land. And then it took another year to get started with the construction. So in that year, all those steps were finalized, and it also took. They were already looking for a bank before they bought the land, and it was also quite difficult to find a bank here. Not because the project is so high risk, but because in Holland there are not many cooperations like this, where this, the people who go live then themselves, that they organize themselves for it. For example, in Germany and Switzerland, it's much more common. I don't know about other countries. I'm not sure about France, actually. So it's not so common. So banks here in Holland have no experience with it, and everything that's unknown is a risk for them. So that's the reason why it's risky for them, not because the project in itself is risky. So we found a bank from Germany who has more experience with it, who was willing, was immediately had faith in the project, and they had their models, and they said, no, you have a solid. You have it's a lot of paperwork. Huh? So then we had the main contractor, and then sort of they give us the main planning, and they make sure that the timing is all right. As a subcontractor, we only do our small part in planning. But now, just to put another hat on, I'm also in the group that is like that's the part of the ecovillage that gave the assignment to the main contractor as well. So as a main contractor, you also have to interact with the architect and with the main contractor to manage it. And we also had active input in there because we had quite a tight schedule, because the place where we lived temporarily needed to go back to the municipality. So there was a tight schedule, and we actually we found somebody, a project. He's supporting us in the project. He's not taking over the lead, or he's not a project manager, but he supports us in our role to manage the project well. And he brought a few new ideas. For example, the planning that you see behind here, according to the lean methodology. Lean, famous from Toyota. Now it's everywhere. Everything's lean. Some people are even getting sick of lean because everybody talks about it. And it's not because you talk lean or you do something that's like lean that it automatically functions. It's never like that. You have to think it through very much. But it brought us more insight, and more overview, and we made the hard deadline that 6 months ago there were many doubts whether we would really make the deadline or not. We were quite confident that we would find some way to manage it, but to really make the deadline, many people had big doubts, and everybody in the project worked really hard to make it happen. So the main contractor, Ecoplus and Huub van Laarhoven, our architect, and the whole ecovillage worked really hard to make it happen. You also worked very hard, so thank you for that. Without your help, it would have been a lot harder. So and we made the deadline. So yeah.
And during the construction, have you made some problematics? I don't know about innovative materials you are using here. If yes, what was the big problematics you faced?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. We like to refer to them as challenges, so that we try and keep our mind in the solution setting, and not. There were quite a lot of, and still are. There are quite a lot of challenges, also because a lot what we do is quite new. Some things are completely new. For sure, many things are new for also the main contractor, for some of the subcontractors. In this way of building, some of the materials that are used are completely new. So that is a challenge on its own. On top of that, we have some systems that are relatively new, like a direct current system in-house, a smart grid, direct current, the basalt battery for our heating in the winter, and everything that comes across. So those were big things that had to be settled. You have to make a contract with them. The calculations need to be okay. We need to have some certainty. You cannot just go into the wild, because it's nice to have a lot of faith, and you should always have it. And we always try to have our partnerships based on mutual trust. At the same time, when the project is finished, there will be 36 households here. So we have a responsibility as well to them to make sure that not after 3 years we're without heating and there's no money to do something else. So with the size of the project also comes a responsibility. And the bigger the project grows and the more real it becomes, the more that grows as well. So that's a maturity step that we are taking all the time, maturing in that process. And one of the challenges, for example, was to make a good contract with the inventor of this innovative system and the main contractor to support that and how to deal with that. That was a big challenge. But in the end, we got the contract, so we could go on with it. Sometimes practical things, for example, the one putting the tiles. We were quite late ordering the people who put the tiles in the bathroom and in the toilet. It's very simple, The guy put tiles. It's quite a precise job. It's not so easy. Not everybody can do it. So you have to find it, and it has to fit in the schedule. And then they found someone, and he smelled that there was some pressure on it, so he asked double the price of the reference. They said, take it or leave it. But we also have quite a tight. Although the project encompasses a lot of money, it's also because there's a lot of innovative stuff. It's not that we have money spare that we can just. So then they did everything they could, the main contract, to find another person who could do it, and then they told them, "Oh yeah, we're coming that day," and then they just don't come. Like, what? So problems like that, or when the planning changes because of the weather and you want to do something else, and then the stuff hasn't been ordered yet, and it's quite a complex logistical process as well. Yeah, and they're all interlinked.
Yeah.
One is linked to the other so much. If something small changes, it's even hard to, even if you know the building process, it's hard to imagine how precisely it will influence it, because you never know in detail the other person's work. Because if you knew it in detail, you could do their work as well, right? So it's this translation that there is a lot of that a lot of things can go less smoothly, and that's why we also introduced a daily meeting. We try to keep it short, 15 minutes. Sometimes lasts a bit longer. Just to everybody, what are you doing today? What are you doing tomorrow? You need anything in particular? Oh, Nila says, oh, but I'm going to do that. Oh, and then immediately you try to avoid the problems beforehand. It doesn't always work, but many problems get filtered out like that as well.
Okay.
That's my son. He's always the loudest. Does that answer your question, or?
Give us a few examples of
Why have you chosen to construct the houses in circle?
That's interesting. So our architect has his way of designing. He calls it healing architecture. He's convinced that the way something is designed, especially things that you live in, that it has an influence on the human body and the human mind, and that if you do it in a bad way, it influences in a bad way. If you do it in a good way, it influences you in a good way. And if you look at many old cultures, maybe technologically less advanced, but also technologically more advanced cultures, they tend to build houses with the views towards each other. It had to do originally with safety. If you live in the jungle, you want to have the outside closed and inside it's safe. All fortresses, and also you have a typical square farms in Belgium and the Netherlands, for example, as well. A fortress as well in south of France. The puits, all the puits that you have there, they are around it, and inside you have a center. Although it's not precisely a circle, but it's directed inwards. And there's also some. I know that there is also some support for it. They did in refugee camps. They did research on factors that might influence social unrest in refugee camps, because it's a serious issue. Those people very often live there for long times, much longer than intended. They have all had a recent history, quite disturbing, and poor prospects for the near future. So you have a lot of ingredients for unrest. But they looked at what factors make a difference, and they also looked at how whatever it was, caravans, tents, whatever, how it was set up. And they found out that when it's set up towards each other, could be a bit more square or not, or whether it's set up in rows, they found it as an independently correlated with social unrest and social unease with the people and problems. So they found that, and it was not linked to luxury. So you can have a very probably never, but in a refugee camp, but a more comfortable place. But when it was put not in a way that was facing to each other, you would be less happy, let's say, to put it bluntly, than when you had less comfort, but that you were facing towards each other. So that was one of the reasons to. I don't know all the details of healing architecture, but I know this is for sure. This argument has played a big role in building in a circle. Yeah.
Okay. And if I want to live in one of these houses, what should I do and should I pay?
The procedure is as follows. So, in order to be eligible to rent a house, so to be sure they're all rental houses, because we want it to be affordable for most people. So we're below the in Holland there's a threshold that if some people need some support for paying their rent if they don't have a big income, but then you cannot rent big houses, so it has to be under a certain amount per month. So we have put it in our statutes that always these houses will be below this threshold, so that the majority of people in the Netherlands can afford to live here. We made it rental houses so that if some people doesn't feel comfortable in the group anymore, wants to do something else in life, that it's easy to leave. Also, we want people that support the project plan. So if you make it private property, you cannot tell somebody who to sell it to, and maybe he sells it to a person who is not so ecological, maybe, or doesn't support the project plan. And then the community sort of, it doesn't work really well when you want to form a bit of a sense of community. So that's why they're rental houses. So in order to be eligible, you need to become a member of the renters society. And in order to become a member of the rental society, there's a procedure. So it's tried to be as objective as possible. And the procedure is that you have to first go to an info session. So just you have some information, so you know a bit what it's about. After you go to an info session, you can, if you want, you can start helping out on Saturdays. Saturdays are reserved for that. So people are interested, they come on Saturdays. Sometimes they can also have an exception, maybe on another day, but basically on Saturdays. Then you need to work at least 4 Saturdays to help out. So you get to know the eco-village, and people from the eco-village get to know the persons. And you have to attend one of our general meetings. And sometimes we have some social happenings as well. You also have to attend one of those social events as well. So, and after that, if you still like the eco-village, you get a questionnaire, and you fill in the questionnaire, and then there's a conversation will be organized. And if it's a match and both parties say yes, it's like a marriage. Then you become part of the rental society, and there is a fee involved. So per adult, you pay 5,000 euros. But if you leave, you get it back.
Okay.
So the money is not. It's there when you leave, and the society still has the money. It didn't go bankrupt. And then you get the money back. And at first I was like, oh wow, it's quite some money. In practice, we found out that some people who really don't have a lot of money still managed to find that amount to invest. I asked, when I entered here, I asked also, why do you have this fee? And it came from, apparently there's quite a lot written about eco-villages and communities, and a lot of experience has been done with communities. Also, people have investigated what works and what doesn't work, and they try to summarize that knowledge in traits of, that are associated with communities that function well, and things that traits that were associated with communities that functioned less well, that fell apart or something happened, or they had some problems. And apparently a financial incentive came out as being somehow it filters people who are maybe less sincere. I'm not saying it's the only filter or it's the only possibility, but somehow it was associated with this, and the amount was chosen, one, based on that there is a need for money, because without money it's hard to do stuff, especially in the beginning, and also according to the wages, average wages in the Netherlands, that even people who maybe have a bit less to spend would still somehow be able to find it, although it's arguable, but these are the reasons that they told me why they put that money. So, and that's it. And then you become a member, and then you can rent a house.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last question.
Yeah, I think.
Okay, so for the last question, do you have any advice for young generation?
For the future.
Yeah.
Don't do what the old generation did. Because if you do what you always did, you get what you always got. So if you want to get something else, you have to do something else.
Okay.
It's an interesting question, and I feel privileged that I have the opportunity to tell it in front of the camera. Maybe it can be of use to somebody. When I started work, I also tried to do an extra master in educational sciences, and there was a subject there about the philosophy of educational sciences as well. And I remember there was an important paper by, I forgot, was it Hannah Arendt or Martha Nussbaum? I don't even remember, I'm getting old. And it said about what the job is of education. And when you talk about education, you can make a big difference between education up until you're adult and adult education. So let's just for now leave out adult education when you talk about education of the next generation. What is the job of the generation to teach? Because if the old generation teaches the young generation exactly what to do, then nothing changes. So if you look at it from a more philosophical point of view, you should explain the situation really how it is. No fairy tales. Not make it any more beautiful, not make it worse than it is either. You tell them, this is what my generation and what I learned, what previous generations did. And this is what we got. And now it's up to you. Because the moment you start telling the other generation what to do, you lose out the you undermine already new things. And I think only if the next generation, every generation should do something so good that the old generation couldn't even imagine it possible. And that would be real growth across generations. If it's happening now or not, I'm not sure. I hope so. When I see you guys doing this blog and going around with soft travel, it gives me hope that that the possibility is alive. So yeah.
If you want to tell us about maybe a subject we forgot or
No, I like your questions. I like to talk, you know. Maybe it influenced your choice. When you do something, enjoy it. You really enjoy it, and find out for yourself. Don't believe or disbelieve. Things are, I in the past I disbelieved. Now I try to be honest and say I don't know, because then you leave the possibility of learning something new. If with that attitude, I think you will learn a lot more and get a lot more out of life. Do not disbelieve or believe. Just say I don't know. Find out if you want to find out, or do something else if you want to do something else. And then, yeah. They could make the world a better place already. Something simple as that.
Okay, so thank you for all the details you gave us.
You're welcome.